please do not go off now. Don't you dare. So as you can see, we had some serious amounts of rain for November, which really put a bit of a dampeners on the whole of November, because lots of cold water going into any venue isn't the one. So it was a bit of a struggle, but eventually we had some calmer weather come round, which was quite nice, and I hadn't had the thermals out quite yet. So it's the 10th of November, it's the beginning of November, or a week or so into November, and I've managed to get up to my syndicate for 2 nights. It's a bit of a slap for me. It's a sort of hour and a half drive, 80 odd miles, something like that, so it's not exactly around the corner, but anyway, really worth it, as you've probably seen some of the fish that I've had previously, like back in September and that, and the ones that you didn't see, I'd lost a few fish as well while I've been fishing here, because it was really weedy, and even though I've dropped the lead, we've got a boat, but you have to 2 people have to be on at the same time to be able to use the boat, which is a bit awkward, and you have to have a life jacket. So a couple of times when I've gone to get it, I've come back and the fish has been off or done me in a snag, but very weedy. It's only like supposed to be about 70 fish in here, so it's not particularly running alive with fish, which is great. It's a bit of a challenge, and I guess we're fishing around about 7 acres or something like that, I think, roughly, maybe even a little bit more, but it's a little bit bigger than what I might be thinking. But anyway, so I've got 2 nights. I've been in the swim that I had a couple of fish out of last time, but obviously, like I say, they're very nomadic, so they could be anywhere, and there's not many people fishing as it gets colder. So I'm on my own today, or these 2 nights, and which doesn't help really, because if you do have a fish, chances are they're going to bugger off, and if they don't come across any other lines, they will just not come back. So it's a matter of maybe moving around, which again, like I said before, I don't like doing in my other videos. If I'm fishing for slightly bigger fish, I don't like moving around. But anyway, I've done the first night in a swim, and pretty much prime conditions really. The weather's great at the moment. We've got like 14 degrees, which is a bit weird. 12 to 14 degrees. Hadn't dropped below 10 degrees for the next 3 nights prior to this, up until what we now Wednesday, so tomorrow going to be the same. So consistency is what you're looking for. Often get people say like, oh, what am I looking for when I'm fishing this time of year, and any tips, blah blah blah, but that's one of them. If you can see 3 or 4 consistent days, whether it be 5 degrees, just as long as it's 5 degrees, it's when it goes up and down, that just throws the fish all over the place, and the wind don't help as well if that's all over the place as well. But any kind of consistent weather this time of year is fantastic. But anyway, done a night up there in another swim. Not so much as a bleep all night, not so much as a liner. I like to fish for liners, not so much as a liner. A bleep, not nothing. Didn't see anything, didn't hear anything in the night. I got up a couple of nights, couple of times during the night to have a jimmy and all that. Didn't see anything. Stayed up for a little while. Not a thing. But got up this morning early, and just at first light, again, still didn't see anything. But come up a couple of swims up and had a look, and just noticed a couple of little feeding bubbles in a couple of little patches, and it wasn't gas, because it started in one bit and then it moved a little bit, then it stopped. So I got the binoculars out and had a good look, and it was definitely fish feeding. And so yeah, by the time I come back with the binoculars, it had stopped. I stood there for a little while longer, and it started again. So it's definitely fish here. As we speak, actually, I'm seeing a few bubbles, not directly over my bait, but a little bit further past. So there are definitely fish up in this end, which is great. So you never know, fingers crossed I might have something, but let's hope so anyway. Yeah, so I'm basically fishing all 3 rods on the same spot, what they call tram lining. My lines are all really tight together, all in the same area, all nice and clean on silt. Fishing 3 stiff hinged rigs, size 4 wire gapes, and slightly stiffer booms. And I've put sort of 10 spoms of hemp and 10 mil cell out there with a little bit of smart liquid. So all went down with nice drops. Rods are in, nice and comfortable. Let's just see what pans out. Despite my efforts on that particular session, nothing was forthcoming, but you've got to be in it to win it, and on to the next session it was. So 0 degrees this morning. Come to a local day ticket just to try and nick a bite. I've not been out for a week or so. Been busy with the old work, which is nice leading up to Christmas. But yeah, I've just turned up, 0 degrees. Not gonna get much warmer than 1 degree today, but the sun's about to come up, which always warms up a little tiny bit. Northeasterly wind is going to keep it pretty chilly today, so we'll give it a bash in this sea, eh? So I've just come walking around the margins and managed to find a fish just sitting there, and this is what they do when it gets cold and that water temperature drops. They literally just sit motionless. Here you go. That'll do with it. That'll do for a cold 2nd of December. A cold start winter's day. Well, I think it's safe to say that I've found them. In quite a few liners suddenly. Just need one of them to make a mistake. I'm getting liner after liner, so they're obviously grouped up. Fingers crossed one of them rips off. So, fish number 4, not fishing anywhere particularly hard. Nice little runs water, if you like, but for December, quite a nice bite and a nice fish as well, slightly bigger. Probably just under 20 pound, I reckon, 18, 19 pounds, something like that. Quite chunky, quite a big belly on him, but nice fish all the same, nice colours, nice and dark, mouth's in decent nick, which is really nice to see on these day ticket waters. Yeah, slipping back, the rods are back out, hopefully we'll have a few more. I've moved about a little bit, but you have to this time of year, and yeah, well pleased at doing it. Ran quite a bit today, and the real reward is this £26 common, which will do me, thank you very much. I'm going to slip him back now and head off home for a bit of tea because I'm starving. A lovely jubbly. So we are halfway through December, and popped over to the sanctuary just for the day and for the night. I'm going to do a night, and not been here that long, and had this nice £24 chunky mirror, some big old shoulders on him. He took one of my homemade pop-ups, little cell ones with a little fleck of yellow, that I've been showing you on my Instagram pages and stuff and Facebook, and perhaps I'll do a little video, actually a little bit in my vlog, and show you, or sort of tell you what my thoughts are behind that little bit of fleck in that hook bait. So anyway, yeah, picked up another one of my little homemade hook baits, nice chunky December mid-20. So I'm going to slip him back and get the rod back out again. Happy with that? Thank you. Rod's out. Little bit of brekkie on. Come on the carp. Now, as you're probably aware, I've made my own bait for years and years now, and I've always liked to sort of like tweak things and mess around with ingredients and add this and add that, take things away, and just mucking around really to try and get, you know, results. And obviously I've been with Mainline for many years, obviously still use all their feed bait and all their hook baits and stuff, and the liquids and everything else, and the particles and that, which is great. But from time to time throughout the year, I still like to make my own hook baits, and so I'm always chopping and changing with what I make and what I use, and throughout the year. And something that's always kind of like fascinated me a little bit really is this colour thing, you know. Can carp see colour? No, they can't. Yes, they can. There's arguments about it. I've read loads of scientific papers about it, especially when I was writing for Carp World, for the Bait World section, for nigh on 10 years. I think it was nearly 10 years. It was all about, you know, trying to find out correct information to try and relay to the public, basically. And in loads of scientific papers, you know, fish can see, and they've got really good vision. If you ask anyone scientifically about a fish's vision, they'll tell you they can see really, really well. And that even boils down to sort of like murky water, clouded up water, but then obviously their senses do take over. But I don't want to go too far into it because, you know, you can argue the point whether that's right or wrong. But as far as I'm concerned, they've got quite good eyesight, really good eyesight, as good as our eyesight, but it works differently because it's underwater. Anyway, what I want to try and get onto is a little subject of colour and just the flecks, really, you know, especially winter. I tend to find that winter, it usually comes into its own. A lot of the time we tend to use a bottom bait with like a little tipper. It might be like a bit of corn, or it might be a yellow pop-up, or it might be the other way round. It might be a fish meal bait with a white tipper or a yellow topper or whatever, you know. So we're always adding another colour to the hook bait we're using. So what I'm trying to get at basically is, if you're feeding match the hatch hook baits, we tend to add a little bit of colour to those hook baits so that hook bait stands out, in the hope that the carp pick that bait up first. Now, I've always found that certain colours work at certain times of year on certain venues. So some venues I've found, you know, they tend to favour white hook baits. Some venues I've found they tend to favour yellow, or they tend to favour a red or a pink. But it's always that slightly brighter colour that tends to get picked up first. So what I like to do is, when I'm fishing match the hatch hook baits, I want that hook bait to be what I'm feeding. So when you talk about match the hatch, I'm literally fishing match the hatch. And the thing is, you can take a hook bait, which I do, out of the bag, like a 15mm hook bait, say, or feed bait hook bait, out of the bag, and trim that down and add a topper. But that then becomes a bit of a snowman. And I know it sounds like it's been a bit picky, but I found that consistently, where I was using snowmen hook baits, I wasn't quite getting the results. And what I wanted to do is, I wanted to fish match the hatch, but I wanted to fish something that was a little bit more, stood out in their faces a little bit more, a little bit brighter. But I didn't want to keep chopping down hook baits. It's fine to do that, but you tend to use pop-ups, bottom baits, chopping one down. You have a fish, get the rig ready, chop the top off, you know, chop the bottom off the pop-up, put them together, and so on. And it goes on and on. And you end up cutting down hook baits. But I wanted to try something a little bit quicker than that. And I didn't want to have to keep cutting hook baits down. And I wanted to match the hatch. So I wanted to fish a boilie shape, same size as what I'm feeding. So basically what I come up with is, I rolled some cell pop-ups just in the Polaris mix, didn't add any colour to them. And then what I did was, I broke off a little bit of paste, just a small bit, so I had about 3/4 and 1/4. And with the 1/4 of paste, I rolled that in a little bit of yellow dye, as in the food dye that we use for the boilie making. And so then I had cell hook bait basically, or pop-up if you like, in the standard colour. And then I've got a little bit of a yellow. So I think I've shown you, I've done it on Facebook anyway, and shown you how to roll them and all the rest of it, and how they come out. But what you end up with basically is this type of thing. So we've got, you can see a pop-up there, see a pop-up with just a little tiny fleck going through the middle of it, and not all the way around it, just on the top of it. Okay, so that really is almost like I've cut a top down of a boilie and added a yellow topper, but I haven't. So therefore that bait is a feed bait. That's exactly what I'm feeding. Now I'm feeding today 12mm 10mm cell. That's what I'm feeding, and that is a 12mm bait. So that's a tiny little bit bigger, literally by a couple of millimeters, but it's got a little yellow tipper to it. Now that's the key. I first took these out a couple of weeks back, just to a small runs water, just to sort of you know, dip my toe in the water and see what reaction I get, just to see whether they, you know, I was getting more bites on them than any other bait. And they worked out really well. I ended up putting them all on all the rods, and then had fish off of all of them. So they've done really well. Anyway, so I've come over today, over to the sanctuary, and I've tried them over here. And the first rod that went off was the rod with one of them on. Don't get me wrong, you're still going to catch them by adding a yellow tipper or, you know, a snowman. But consistently, and to catch more, for me, I seem to be catching a lot more by just keeping the hook bait the same size and, you know, the same shape and everything else as the stuff that I'm feeding. So fingers crossed, we'll have a few more. So fish number 2, set one's come along. Really happy with this one. £26 on the nose. Absolutely made up with that. Again, took one of my little homemade cell pop-ups with a little yellow flick I was talking about. But yeah, really pleased with that. He's not so happy, but there you go. He's eager to get back, but What a lovely fish, eh? Not bad for middle of December. Temperature just crept up a little bit, just gone over 10 degrees today, 11 degrees, and the old pressure is just on its way up. I think it was low yesterday, so yesterday would have been maybe even a better day. But anyway, happy with that. I'm gonna slip him back to his watery home. Thank you, mate. So I've done an afternoon and a night in one swim. I then moved this afternoon around about midday to another swim, which is usually pretty good for holding up fish basically this time of year. And but with a broken finger, I just couldn't get out there at the moment. It's still on the mend. I was doing 25 wraps, which is all right, and you can normally pick them up there, but I weren't getting any liners or anything, like any signs to say that they were there. The guy opposite me, a friend of mine, was doing quite well. He was having bite after bite. Well, yeah, bite after bite. He's using a boat, and he's managed to get out there without, you know, the casting and everything. Very accurate. So the boats do come into their own certain times of the year, and they can be a great advantage to have. But I haven't got one. But anyway, so I've decided to have another move. It's around about 2:30 now in the afternoon, and I've put all 3 rods out to likely looking spots. Areas that I've had fish on before at this time of year, which is something really good to remember. So, you know, if you are fishing somewhere and you've had fish off of certain spots, certain areas when it gets cold, most likely those fish are going to stay there or go back to those areas again at the same time next year or whenever. So, and that also relays into sort of like summer as well. But anyway, if they like an area, they generally tend to stay there, you know. So always remember that if you've had them from a certain area, especially more so in winter probably, well, I've found anyway, consistently they tend to be there. They tend to be back on the spots. And so the rods have only been out for sort of like 30 minutes now, and I'm already getting liners, definite liners. There are definitely fish around, and it also helps to be really, really accurate with the bait this time of year. If you're spomming out, you know, make sure those spomms, if you're putting out 2 or 3 spomms, you know, don't want to be going too crazy. 2 or 3 spomms, make sure that they're over that hook bait. You know, they're about. Get your wraps right and make sure that they're on the money, because it can make a massive difference. So yesterday, those 2 fish that I had in the afternoon, I found that my bait was directly over the top of those hook baits, and it wasn't, you know, too long before I'd actually got a bite. So it's just something to bear in mind, to just be, you know, really accurate with your baiting. When I do my tuitions, it's one of the things that I try and highlight to a lot of clients that come with me. Try and keep that bait as accurate as you can possibly be all through the year, you know. Again, this is why, one of the reasons why bait boats can be so deadly, because the bait is so bang on top of the actual hook bait a lot of the time. You just cannot compete with that accuracy, you know. It's a bit like, I'll try and relay it to the way I see it. It's a bit like if you're a match angler and you use the pole and you feed on the pole, you can't really get it much more accurate than feeding on a pole as compared to a float. Yeah, you'll be over the top of your float and that with your pouch of maggots or whatever you're feeding, but with a pole cup and a pole, you just really can't beat the accuracy. And also the presentation is just, you know, second to none. And again, presentation wise, you need to bear in mind this time of year, in actual fact, you can probably get away with it a little bit more this time of year because it's not as weedy. You've not got as much to contend with as in bottom detritus. So you're fishing over a lot of clean areas. Even if you're in the silt, a lot of it tends to be fairly clean. Unless you're fishing, obviously, with a fish, fishing a lake that's, you know, very heavily tree lined, then presentation, obviously, you need to think about. But if you're fishing somewhere like big pits, They've got a lot of open water. A lot of the leaf matter tends to fall around the margins. That's not to say don't avoid the margins. So I've got two out. I've got one at 18 wraps, one at 15 wraps, and I've got one at. I didn't wrap it up, but I've got one at around about 5 or 6 wraps, just off the marginal shelf. I know they tend to come in on this area. They like that area. Again, I've caught the fish there before, many times. So it's all about going back over your old haunts. You know, don't forget where you caught the fish from before. And I've just had a bleep on that marginal rod. So fingers crossed, broken fingers crossed. Might have one just to end the session. So I gave the rods a good few hours, but nothing was forthcoming. So I decided to wind the rods in, stick a few fresh baits on there, and have a bit of a recast. It's quite good to do that this time of year, especially when it's like cold and you know you're looking for fish all the time. A bit more bait over the top of each rod, and job was a good one. Another thing to remember is wraps. Obviously, fishing at any distance, you want to be as accurate as possible, like I keep mentioning. Wraps is a great way of getting things pretty much on the money. You can't really get much more accurate than that unless you have a boat, which at the time I didn't have one. Anyway, fishing here, it's very important, like I say, to be completely accurate, and wraps is the way to do it. Now, listen very carefully, Snoopy. This year is the year. You got to work really hard this year, okay? Don't let me down. I've got faith in you. So my first short session in January. It wasn't too long, but before I knew it, rods were out and I had a take. There's a syndicate, no one here, and put a rod out, a little bit of bait over it, and had this lovely mirror. Happy. So that was -4 this morning when I left home. -3 in the van, and then 4s wherever I went. Anyway, I was supposed to have a little social with a good friend of mine, and we went to a couple of little places near us just for a bend in the rod really, and they were all frozen solid. So I've come over to my good mate's syndicate, the Sanctuary over in Essex, and put the rods out. No one here, pretty bitter cold, but sun's up, and it's a lovely day, and the rods have been out for probably about 2 hours, and I just had this lovely £20 on the nose mirror. Absolutely really made up. January carp, freezing cold, everyone's fishing for perch and roach, seems to be quite trendy these days. And I've been there and done it, and I might go back to it a little bit, you know. I might have a little dabble at some point, but whilst these big fat things are still, you know, available to catch, I love catching them, you know. And it's even more of a challenge when you go out and it's winter, really cold, and you have to do a bit of work to try and find them, and you know, it's great. I love the feeling of it, and I just love it. I just can't explain sometimes how good it makes me feel. I'll spin him round, just quickly show you the other side, and then we'll slip him back. Lovely fish. Got some nice dark flanks on him. Some lovely big scales towards that end. Look at that. Absolutely made up with it. Proper peach of a fish. £20 on those. So I've still got 2 rods out. I'm going to get that other rod back out and see if we can nick another one. Woohoo! So I just want to say a massive thank you to all the people that have subscribed to my channel. Please continue to do so and keep hitting that like button for more content. Tight lines.